better what you and I ought to be doing to create a more healthy and communicative environment. Let me tell you how this hour is going to go. We're going to commence this hour speaking with the first chief security officer of the University of Utah, a gentleman named MARLON LYNCH, someone we spoke to way back in December before he had assumed this new position. And we later on are going to speak with a friend of mine. Her name's Libby. She is a white woman who has adopted a black daughter. She and her husband are transracial adoptive parents here in the state of Utah. We'll find out about that experience and what lessons you and I can learn together. And then we'll be speaking to someone who has been the driving force behind this effort here at KSL, someone who has helped us make connections and speak with folks and learn lessons that we didn't even know we needed learning. And that is Adrienne Andrews, the Chief Diversity Officer at Weber State University. And finally, in this hour, we will wrap up with a conversation with a therapist here in the state of Utah, an African-American woman who specializes in racial issues here in Utah. And so let me just ask back in the studio, is Mr. Lynch ready for us? Outstanding. Mr. Lynch, let me welcome you back to the program. If you remember, you and I last had the occasion to speak in December. That was when you were in New York still on your way to Utah. You've had now a few months to settle in and get the lay of the land. How does Utah strike you so far?
So far, so good. Actually, my departure from New York was fairly timely, as we all know now, considering how severely COVID-19 impacted New York City specifically. And being here, obviously we're transitioning as well. As I'm wearing my gaiters so I can transition as needed as I engage with people. But it's great. I'm enjoying Salt Lake City, enjoying the Mountain Sunshine.
Outstanding. Utah is not a state known for its large African-American communities. Your professional background has placed you in New York City, in Chicago, and elsewhere, areas with significantly larger Black communities. How have you, sir, as an African-American gentleman yourself, how have you felt those differences since coming to Utah, if you have at all?
Well, you feel it because it's very obvious. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to be, maybe only one of a handful of people of color in the room. But having said that, I have felt it to be welcoming as well, both the African-American community as well as the majority community. It's that way, but you're right. For the fact that there's not much representation here, it's in comparison, it's readily apparent.
Again, we're speaking with MARLON LYNCH, Chief Safety Officer at the University of Utah, relatively new resident here in the state of Utah. Let me ask you this, sir. Have the demographics of the state of Utah and the university, have they changed your approach to your line of work at all?
It's an impact to the line of work. As we talk about systemic issues, one of the systemic issues is representation within public safety. From the people of color, the community, various communities. And so it makes it difficult from a recruiting component with that. Not means, that's definitely not an excuse for it, but it just makes the approach more intentional when we talk about not only racial and ethnic diversity, but gender as well. So it does have an impact with that. It is something where it is definitely top of mind and a priority for the university, and consequently, as for me as well in my capacity.
Sure. As you have observed the protests and the demonstrations which have taken place here in Utah, specifically in Salt Lake City, has that at all impacted your approach to the job? Does it reveal anything here in Utah that needs fixing?
Well, it's not just Utah, right? This is it's global with it.
Sure.
And the fixing, fortunately, I am in a position to have a positive impact on that amount of change. And part of the reason that I'm here is that there has to be change that occurs with the Howard University of Utah.
If I'm not needed, I'm going to go back to the live mic show. I will say.
I'm sorry. Seems as though we were.
We're still getting the kinks worked out here in this video conferencing thing.
Okay. All right. So I think that in my capacity, again, I have the ability to have a positive impact and to influence the change that is ready and necessary to occur specifically here. And I have felt that from my colleagues as well that are here in Salt Lake City and in Utah.
If you could speak to Utahns right now who are really for the first time grappling with questions like this of race relations, what would you, from your experience across the country and now you coming here to Utah, what would you say to them?
I would say that this is the time for it. The momentum is there. Growing up in Chicago, having experienced it personally myself, also professionally in participating in protests as a police officer, standing on the steps of the state capitol as members of the Klan are marching behind me and calling me all types of names, and meanwhile I'm there to protect them. Having to have conversations with my friends regarding how could I be a police officer, be involved in law enforcement, considering what we grew up with and how we are still dealing with today. And even having conversations with my 2 teenage boys in regards to how we have to act under certain circumstances, and that unfortunately our conduct and behavior may be viewed differently under the same or similar circumstance as some of your friends. So Utah, it's here. We have to deal with it. I think we have a great opportunity actually to be an example of doing it the proper way. And let's not miss this opportunity to have this positive impact on the level of change that's needed.
MARLON Lynch, I wish we had more time to chat. I'm sorry that we have to say goodbye. Let's connect, though, again in the future and continue this conversation. My guest, MARLON Lynch, first Chief Safety Officer at the University of Utah. Sir, thanks again.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break. When we return here, we'll be joined by a friend of mine, Libby Mitchell. She, a white woman, is the adoptive mother of a black daughter. We'll learn about their experience and what lessons they can share with the rest of us and how we can be better from their experience. That's ahead on Live Mic, this special hour on KSL News Radio relating to race relations here in the state of Utah. That's ahead on KSL News Radio.
I'm John Huntsman, and I approve this message.
Today, we face the most significant crisis in a century, and addressing it will require someone who understands how global forces impact families right here at home. Returning Utah to prosperity won't happen without a strategy. During my first term as governor, we had a plan. We put it into action, and we laid the foundation for 15 years of economic growth. Now more than ever, Utah needs a proven and experienced governor, a governor who can lead. For more information, visit huntsman2020.com.
Summer is here. Maybe it's time for a little road trip. How about something adventurous, outdoors, and with the weather heating up, something cool like the Swiss Alps? No, silly, not on a plane across the world, but right in your own backyard. Yeah, jump in the car and head up the canyon to Zermatt, Utah Resort and Spa. Swiss-inspired and safe travel approved. The staff at Zermatt, Utah works diligently to help ensure your safety. Zermatt, Utah Resort and Spa is known for crisp, cool mountain air and plenty of amenities for family fun, including an 18-hole mini golf course, large indoor and outdoor pool, tennis, volleyball, and tons of mountain sport fun like hiking, biking, razor riding, and boating. Zermatt, Utah offers 22 different luxurious room types, a full-service spa, a barbecue restaurant, an authentic European bakery, and a pub. Everyone deserves a mountain getaway. Visit ZermattResort.com to plan your Swiss-inspired adventure today. That's ZermattResort.com. Auf Wiedersehen.
Hey, I'm Andy. If you don't know me, it's probably because I'm not famous. But I did start a men's grooming company called Harry's. The idea for Harry's came out of a frustrating experience I had buying razor blades. Most brands were overpriced, overdesigned, and out of touch. At Harry's, our approach is simple. Here's our secret. We make sharp, durable blades and sell them at honest prices for as low as $2 each. We care about quality so much that we do some crazy things, like buy a world-class German blade factory. Obsessing over every detail means we're confident in offering a 100% quality guarantee. Millions of guys have already made the switch to Harry's, so thank you if you're one of them. And if you're not, we hope you give us a try with this special offer. Get a Harry's starter set with a 5-blade razor, weighted handle, shave gel, and a travel cover, all for just $3 plus free shipping. Just go to harrys.com and enter 7750 at checkout. That's harrys.com, code 7750. Enjoy.
You're spending more time at home. With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Kira Hoffelmeyer. First, for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic started here in Utah, state leaders conducted a news conference entirely in Spanish today. Governor Gary Herbert announced yesterday this would become a more regular thing to address the unique challenges of the state's Hispanic and Latino communities in combating the virus. Second, CDC says there could be 10 times more coronavirus cases in the U.S. than reported. The agency's director, Dr. Robert Redfield, says this comes after tracking blood samples across the country. Third, Disney says it's going to completely reimagine Splash Mountain because of the connections to a racist film, Song of the South. The company says it'll instead be themed after the Princess and the Frog movie featuring a black princess. It's 83 degrees right now in Salt Lake. Back to a special hour of race relations with Jeff Kaplan and Jason Lee on KSL News Radio.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Live Mike. As you heard there, we this hour here on KSL News Radio are dedicating the entire hour to race relations here in Utah. This hour will be made up of a number of conversations with individuals from or with proximity to the African-American community. In fact, joining me now is a good friend of mine, Libby Mitchell. Again, she's a friend. She and her husband are transracial adoptive parents. Now, Libby, you and I were texting last night and you introduced me to this phrase for the first time, transracial adoptive parents. I'm still learning the lexicon. Tell us what that means.
Means that we adopted a child who is she's black. She's not of our race. We are both white. And when we first decided to do this, when we first decided to be open to other races to adopt, it was deciding to take on a learning curve that we didn't expect when we first started to decide to have children. But to be honest, it's been one of the most enriching and wonderful experiences of my life, not just because I have a great kid and she is a great kid, but also because it's made me kind of see things that I wouldn't have seen before with how I was brought up and where I live. And it's opened my eyes to a lot of stuff.
You're no stranger to Utah. You are well aware of the
Born and raised.
And the makeup of this state. When the time came that you learned that you were going to be the parents of a black baby girl, what were your thoughts and fears at that point?
My thoughts and fears actually started before my daughter was born, because my daughter actually experienced racism in Utah before she was born. When we were looking for adoption agencies, my husband and I were actually shocked at how many agencies actually did a sliding price scale on children based on their race. And we're very brazen about the fact that it would be cheaper for us to adopt a child of color than a white baby. So when we were facing that, we chose an agency that did not do that because that was just abhorrent to us. So we knew that there were going to be challenges from.
Was there any kind of explanation given to this sliding scale you mentioned?
I'm sorry, say again?
Was there any kind of explanation given for this?
There were all kinds of explanations given, and most of them were, they might as well just have come out and said, well, we're racist. There were things about, black children, there are more black children to adopt. There was one agency that told us that, black mothers didn't necessarily get the best prenatal care. But the bottom line was it was racism.
And you chose not to patronize that agency and found instead another one that...
Not to patronize several agencies.
Several, here in the state of Utah.
Yes.
Well, beyond that, any other thoughts or fears actually come to fruition?
We've been very lucky for the most part, but I will tell you that I find it very interesting when I'm out with my daughter and, we do not match. So if I'm in a store, sometimes I will notice store personnel following her or watching her. My husband has actually had interactions with people who have been following her, and he will say, "What are you doing?" And they'll say, "Oh, no, we have it handled." And he'll say, "No, that's my kid. What do you mean?" We've also had, I find it amazing how white people think that they can just put their hands on people of color. My daughter has kinky curly hair, and I'm amazed at how many people think that they can just pet her.
What happens in those circumstances? Do you speak up? Does your daughter speak
I
up?
speak up, and my husband, who is an amazing man, actually goes a bit further. There was one point where a woman came up and put her hand on my daughter's hair, and my husband reached over and put his hand right back on hers. And when she looked at him with shock, he said to her, "It's really awkward, isn't it, when somebody does that?" So we have to be braver than we ever thought we would have to be. We've had to speak up more than I ever thought I'd be comfortable doing. I'm not a person who likes conflict. I'm a person who likes to get along. And that, to protect my child, though, I will go all the way.
When these circumstances arise and they call for interaction either between yourself or your husband or your daughter and the offender, is the person in the wrong? Are they typically receptive to the corrective stance that you take, or is there indignance, or what is the typical reaction to correct behavior?
It's usually shock. There is some indignance. I think that my husband and I, we aren't trying to shame anyone. We're not trying to make anybody feel like an offender. We're trying to get people to understand and become more knowledgeable and become more understanding. We don't want to fight. We want people to accept and change and grow. It's not about you're in the wrong. It's about, well, maybe you didn't know this, and maybe you need to know this. I mean, we don't want people to see our daughter as something that they need to fear or pussyfoot around. We want them to know that she's just a person. And I mean, she's an amazing person, but she's just a person just like their children are.
Yeah. We're speaking with a friend of mine, Libby Mitchell. She and her husband are transracial adoptive parents. A new phrase, I'll admit, that I've just learned in having this conversation. She and her husband are white, and they are the adoptive parents of a wonderful black daughter. I have to say, Libby, you and I have been such great friends for a number of years, and this is the first time you and I are really having a conversation like this. And I apologize for not asking questions like this in the past, but I am grateful to you for having this conversation with me. And if doing so in this setting is helpful to some listeners, that's a wonderful thing, and I admire you for having this conversation. Let me ask you now about the current circumstance. There are people marching in the streets. There are claims of systemic racism. There are certain behaviors engaged in that are, as characterized by some, pretty violent and destructive. What are the conversations like in your home right now as you and your daughter go back and forth and try to analyze what's happening in the country right now?
She doesn't really like to talk about it. Which is totally understandable, but we've had the conversation with her about, if a police officer, if you're stopped by a police officer, put your hands up immediately, and we've let her know that just like every other person, you don't necessarily know what a person's going to do, whether or not they're wearing a uniform. We've also had conversations about the fact that Black lives do matter. And that, while the phrase all lives matter is great, the fact of the matter is that right now, Black lives are the ones being most affected and the ones that really people aren't caring about. We've gone to protests, wearing masks, of course. And we've just kind of let her know that as long as this fight is going on, we are on her side, and we are on the side of progress and change. And that, there are a lot of, while there are very loud and very angry voices, most of the voices are very calm and loving, and most of the voices are very reasonable.
Does Utah need to improve?
Improve race relations? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need to move beyond, first of all, this white saviorism that we seem to have a lot of the time when it comes to dealing with people of color. They're not lesser. They're not here to be saved. They're here to be part of our community. And we need to embrace what they bring to our community, because they really do bring wonderful things. They're wonderful people, and we need to treat them as such. If you see a person of color on the street, don't just assume that they have bad intentions or they shouldn't be in your neighborhood. That's actually happened to us several times in our neighborhood. We've had friends come over, or we've had friends stay with us, and they've been in our neighborhood, or they've been out walking in our neighborhood, and they've had people come out on their lawn and look at them, or just, you're out of place here. And that's not appropriate. We all need to check our privilege, and we all need to check our bias. And checking your bias doesn't mean that you're racist. It just means that you're aware.
Libby, I love you. I love your family. I'm grateful to you for your time here. Thank you so much for everything you've shared. I am immensely grateful.
Love you too, Lee. Kiss that baby.
I will, absolutely. Quick break. When we come back, we're going to turn our attention to Weber State University, where we will be joined by the Chief Diversity Officer. Adrienne Andrews will be my guest next on Live Mike. I'm Lee Lonsberry, and this is KSL News Radio.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City.
1:30 at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top story this hour, and it is breaking news right now. We're getting word of an incident on Legacy Highway in Centerville near Glover Lane. There are multiple emergency vehicles on scene. We've had several calls. We're working right now to confirm that information. We are also hearing that 2 people have been rescued by passersby, and we will bring you the very latest on that story, as well as traffic. It is impacting Legacy southbound. We'll have that coming up in just a moment. The state today is reporting 590 new cases of coronavirus, with more than 7,300 new tests. There are also 30 new hospitalizations and 1 more death, a male in Salt Lake County who was under the age of 65 years old. New unemployment claims in Utah have stayed about the same the last few weeks, just under 5,000. Kevin Burt, the state's unemployment insurance director, says now may be the time for people on unemployment to look at whether the jobs are likely to come back.
And there are decision points that individuals are going to have to come to about, is my industry going to return? And if it's not, do I take advantage of the other opportunities that are available?
About 85,000 people in Utah are getting ongoing unemployment benefits, including $600 a week from the Federal CARES Act. That extra money runs out at the end of July. Governor Gary Herbert is expected to make an announcement regarding Salt Lake County's request to mandate face masks in public. The governor said yesterday he probably would approve it, and we have been told that the governor will speak or issue a statement to that effect at some point today. Now, whenever that happens, we will be sure to break in and let you know right here on KSL News Radio. Coronavirus coverage every 30 minutes on KSL. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The day after Democrats in the Senate blocked a GOP-backed police reform bill, House Democrats are poised to pass their own version today. This is likely to go nowhere in the Senate. One of the lawmakers arguing in favor of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2020 is Congressman Cedric Richmond of Louisiana.
There is a difference of policing in this country, and we're just asking to fix it.
The bill is named for George Floyd, whose death last month at the hands of Minnesota police sparked nationwide protests and calls to address police brutality. Taking a look at your money at this moment, markets in positive territory. The Dow is up by 252 points. That's about 1%, sitting at 25,710. S&P 500 up by 28 points. The NASDAQ, it's up by 84 points. Coming up again, we'll get you up to date on that situation on Legacy Parkway. We have slowdowns due to what we believe is a small plane crash. We'll bring you the very latest.
You're spending more time at home right now, so we invite you to keep KSL by your side.
This is Tim and Amanda with updated news and weather before 9.
Around the house, we're streaming 24/7.
Just go to KSLNewsRadio.com.
There are some 90-degree days coming up this weekend. Is your HVAC system ready to do its job? Is your AC unit ready to combat that heat? Well, if not, you must book an appointment today with Any Hour Services. When you do, you can be sure you'll be getting a specialist knocking on your door, ready to repair or replace whatever is keeping you and your family from enjoying the comfort you deserve. Another thing to know is that when your technician arrives, they'll be healthy and ready to take every precaution to keep your family safe as they go to work. Any Hour Services is already known for the care they take to keep your home clean and safe, while also implementing CDC and World Health Organization guidelines. That implementation has been no problem for Any Hour Services. Each technician's truck is thoroughly disinfected daily. In addition to shoe covers, technicians are also supplied with masks and gloves, and each vehicle has been outfitted with hand washing stations. You can learn more about what Any Hour Services has to offer and book an appointment today at anyhourservices.com.
This is Joe Cordell with the domestic litigation firm Cordell & Cordell. If you're a man and you need help with a family law matter, time may be of the essence. While most family law courts did not fully close due to the COVID virus, most slowed down dramatically, focusing primarily on emergency matters. The result, as you might predict, is a backlog of cases for courts to work through as they resume their normal schedules. So filing early may be advantageous. But don't just rush forward. First, be sure your goals are realistic, that the costs make sense. You likely have other questions. In other words, this means we should talk. You can meet with us by phone, video, or in person. Remember, Cordell & Cordell has years of experience helping guys just like you with issues just like these. After all, this is what we do.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Salt Lake City area attorneys, a partner men can count on. Online at CordellCordell.com. Office in Midvale and Clearfield, 910 West Legacy Center Way, Suite 120, Midvale, Utah, 84047.
The world we live in right now is surreal. And as we all figure out how to navigate the upcoming weeks, Associated Mortgage wants you to know that they're here for you. Lending is continuing and mortgage rates are flirting with historic lows. So now's an amazing time to refinance. Associated Mortgage has refinancing programs to lower your payment and drop PMI. Refinance and get funds for your home improvement project or consolidate debt. If you're ready to refinance and you've been quoted a higher rate than 2.75%, then get a second opinion from Associated Mortgage. Associated Mortgage has the lowest interest rates in the state with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage today at 2.75%. Lower your payment without any out-of-pocket closing costs and save thousands. Call Associated Mortgage now at 801-943-1999. 801-943-1999. 3% APR based on a 30-year conventional fixed-rate loan, $280,000 OAC, equal housing lender, NMLS 51389.
Traffic and weather sponsored by Mountain America, your home for home loans. Ricky Meese, you have a couple of big traffic trouble spots out there.
We do. Now, first of all, we have a lot of emergency crews on the scene of what appears to be a downed aircraft that landed in the field between Legacy Parkway and about Parish Lane, west of that intersection. This is in the Centerville area of Davis County. So if you're traveling southbound on Legacy, you will see that they are taking up a right lane of traffic there. There's been smoke in the area because the crash did start a grass fire, but they're getting all of that under control. And traffic is moving through very cautiously and very well behaved. So good job, drivers, but you do have a little bit of delay there. But the bigger delays are waiting for you. Layton up to South Weber and Uinta. It's all due to construction, both directions on Highway 89. At Alta Bank, they know getting through tough times means helping each other. So together, we'll go higher than ever before. AltaBank.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
88 degrees for a high today with a slight chance of isolated thunderstorms. Clearing 89 tomorrow and up to 90 degrees for your weekend. Right now, 85 degrees at KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com. This is Utah's all-day companion for news.
Race relations in Utah. In-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
Welcome back to Live Mike. Before we get back to our special coverage on race relations in Utah, I do have to bring you some breaking news. Kira Hoffelmeyer joins me in studio with added information on this plane crash in Centerville. Kira, what's the latest?
slow down and see some activity in that area. What we do know is that there were 2 people inside of this plane that crashed that were rescued by people just passing by. UHP tells us this was a fairly fiery incident. They don't know the status of those 2 people, but there were a lot of flames. We saw a lot of smoke on some traffic cameras. We're working to get you more information on that. KSL News Radio's Paul Nelson is working his way to the scene now, Lee.
Kira, thank you. Good for those rescuers, huh? Can't wait to hear that full story. We'll bring it to you here as soon as we have it on KSL News Radio. Now, time is tight, and I don't want to waste a moment with my next guest. As we continue this coverage of race relations in Utah, I'd like to introduce you to Adrienne Andrews, who is the Chief Diversity Officer at Weber State University. Ms. Andrews, thank you so much for your time. How are you?
I am wonderful. Thanks for having me, Lee.
Thank you. Tell me, what are the duties of a Chief Diversity Officer?
Well, you do all of the things if you're the Chief Diversity Officer. You help the institution recognize its climate, figure out where the gaps are, obstacles, opportunities for improvement, so that there can truly be inclusion and support across the board for all those who want to learn, work, or play at the institution.
From your position, have you observed any of these gaps, either in the Weber State community or in the greater Utah community?
Well, we all have gaps, and that's what the reality is. It's figuring out what are the gaps for our individual institutions and how do we address them for the populations that we serve. I'm fortunate in that there are Chief Diversity Officers in almost every institution in the state. And we regularly meet. Lais Martinez at the system office corrals all of us together so that we can share best practices, look at our issues and concerns, and figure out how to move together forward the best way that's going to promote learning, education, and community.
Sure. You've been very generous with your time and your resources. I want to let people know that today's programming has been brought about thanks in large part to your efforts. You have helped us make incredible and valuable and enlightening connections. I want to thank you for that. And I also want to ask you, why are these types of open and frank conversations about race relations so important, even when they at times can be pretty uncomfortable?
Because it's when we don't have them that things really go wrong. It's that whole notion of a color blindness. I don't see color, so then I don't need to talk about your color, your ethnicity, your culture, the identities you hold. But instead of not seeing those things, you erase me. You erase my culture. You erase my color, my heritage, and how that impacts the world that I live in and the opportunities that I have, and how my experiences may fundamentally differ from your own, even though we're both working really hard to the same outcome.
Talk to me more about that, because I will admit to you and to those listening that I am likely one of the guilty parties whose attitude was, I just don't consider race. I don't, like you said, I don't see color. I have, lately in recent years come to understand that that's not the greatest approach. But could you, as an expert in these things, talk to me more about why that's not the healthiest of attitudes to have for a community?
So when you don't see parts of people's identity, then you don't fundamentally see them. You pick and choose what's acceptable to you, and you assume that there's this neutral that we all operate off of. But that's not true. It's not neutral, and we don't all operate from that place. That's why it's so critical for us to understand the difference between equity and equality. Equality is when we all have the same thing. Equity is when we have what we need in order to move forward and be successful. One of the examples I like to use is, imagine you're in a room full of people and you take off your shoes and put them in a big pile. Everybody gets invited to go back and pull out a pair of shoes as long as they're not the original shoes they had. Now, I want you to realize equality is that everyone has a pair of shoes. Equity is when everyone has a pair of shoes that fit. So these notions we have about, people are lazy and this is part of their cultural heritage or identity. That's a fundamentally skewed way of seeing or understanding people. Instead, consider what are the circumstances that this individual or group of people are coming out of. One of the things that I have heard many people say is, minorities, Black people, brown people don't really care about home ownership. And I have to push back on that, because there were restrictions. There were things called redlining in place that stopped Black and brown people from being able to purchase homes that maintained value so that they could create generational wealth that then passed on. So when you say you don't care about home ownership, there were limits to what people could do in terms of home ownership. Even if you look in Salt Lake at our original guides for sales and marketing of homes in Salt Lake, there were areas where there were no people of color, and that was marketed that way. So please understand that some of these myths that we just accept as truth or that we assume to be true really are steeped in the practices of people in terms of how we wanted to create the communities that we live in. And so we're still dealing with those reverberations today.
I see. We're speaking with Adrienne Andrews, the Chief Diversity Officer at Weber State University. Ms. Andrews, we have 1 minute remaining. I'm sorry we don't have more time to sit here and talk, but I want to ask you about a new phrase that has come into my lexicon, and that is microaggression. I'm learning a lot of new phrases here, and microaggressions is a phrase that I've been introduced to here recently. What is that, and how can folks combat it proactively?
So a microaggression is all of those little subtleties that people might say to you, like, oh, you don't sound Black, or you don't look like Black people I know, or you speak without an accent. That's really great. Those are sort of these backhanded compliments, if you will, that really aren't compliments at all. And it's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts. So these microaggressions happen all day long, all life long, and they build up. And what that does is it slowly results in crushed attitude, diminished capacity, and those microaggressions are devastating. So what you can do when you see or hear one is you can interrupt and ask, what did you mean by that? Because I'm not sure if what you said is what you meant to say. Your intent doesn't seem to match your impact. You can create an opportunity to educate the person and explain why what they said was problematic. And then if you don't feel like you have that knowledge base or that skill, if there are other people around you, when they stand up to say something, you can echo them to reinforce the positive message and effectively try and point out that microaggression and let everyone know it's not acceptable to you or the folks that you're around.
Speaking up and calling out offense, that seems to be a theme as we have had this conversation here on KSL News Radio today on race relations. You've mentioned it here. The Deseret News' Jason Lee earlier mentioned it. My past guest, Libby Mitchell, she mentioned it. Thank you for that. We're going to have to leave it at that. Let's you and I connect again in the future, though. There's much I'd like to ask you and much I am certain I could learn from you. But at that, we'll say goodbye. Adrienne Andrews, thank you so much for your time and your participation in this effort here at KSL News Radio.
You bet. Thank you.
All righty. We're going to take a quick break here. And when we return, my final guest in this special hour of race relations in Utah is Melanie Davis, the daughter-in-law of retired pastor France Davis, also a mother, a wife, a business owner, and a Black woman here in Utah. She will share her experience and her expertise next on Live Mic. I'm Lonsberry, and this is KSL News Radio. The weekend is fast approaching, and so too is the perfect time to get your hands dirty and tackle those outdoor projects. Projects like the flower beds, the grow boxes, and the gardens. As you take on these projects, be sure to take advantage of all the Dirt Bag has to offer. Yeah, I said the Dirt Bag. That's a Utah company. It has all the mulches, top dressings, and compost that you need. The popular mulches are available in dark brown, black, and natural shredded mulches, and they're, of course, available by the bagful. When you place an order at thedirtbag.com, you can choose to either pick up or have it delivered right to your home. And if you're looking to keep the weeds out, keep your plants cool, and make your flower colors pop, you must visit thedirtbag.com. And for every bag purchased in Salt Lake County in the month of June, the Dirt Bag will donate $10 to Farmers Feeding Utah. So order your bags today at thedirtbag.com.
Hi, this is Jay Farner, CEO of Rocket Mortgage. Making the right financial decisions has never been more important. We can help guide you to those right decisions now when they matter most. Mortgage rates are near historic lows. So when you call 8338-ROCKET or visit us at rocketmortgage.com to start your refinance, you'll be well on your way to saving money every month. The rate today on our 30-year fixed rate mortgage is 3.375%, APR 3.59%. Right now could be a great time for you to take some positive financial steps forward with a cash-out refinance from Rocket Mortgage, which could give you the boost that you're looking for. In addition, we may be able to help you refinance with little or no out-of-pocket costs. At Rocket Mortgage, we're committed to every client, every time, no exceptions, no excuses, giving you the best mortgage experience. Call us today at 8338-ROCKET or go to rocketmortgage.com to learn more.
Rates subject to change. Pay 1.875% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
If you have school-aged children and teens, you've now experienced learning from home. If things went well and you like the flexibility it offers, or the ability to get more done, or having more family time, why not continue it this fall with expert teachers taking the lead? Mountain Heights Academy is a tuition-free online public charter school for all Utah students in grades 7 through 12. They've been providing high-quality online education for over a decade. See why they're Utah's highest-rated online public charter school. Visit mountainheightsacademy.org.
Across the nation, America is moving forward, finding our footing, getting back on our feet. Life continues to open up. Businesses are getting back to business, and we are too. We know you rely on the Good Feet store to be there when you need us. We're open and ready to serve you. Our personally fit arch supports are designed to help alleviate, even eliminate, foot, knee, hip, and back pain, and provide comfort, balance, and support. The well-being of our customers, associates, and community is our highest priority. So we've implemented new measures, procedures, and precautions, keeping your health and safety in the forefront. The Good Feet store is lending a hand to help America get back on its feet. And just as we have for a quarter century, we're helping to improve the quality of people's lives, 2 feet at a time.
You'll find America's arch support experts in Farmington, Riverton, and Sandy. Call 1-800-NEW-FEET or visit goodfeetnw.com.
Create your own endless summer. Bullfrog Spa's patented jetpacks let you customize your new hot tub. Now at our endless summer sale, you'll save over $3,000. Plus, get a free high-tech audio system worth $1,500. Order a beautiful, customized Bullfrog Spa today. Our factory stores are in Salt Lake, Bluffdale, Orem, Springville, Logan, Layton, and North Ogden. Endless summer sale ends Saturday. Bullfrog Spas. Peaceful body, peaceful mind, peaceful home.
Subscribe to KSL's daily 3 Things You Need to Know newsletter. Every weekday, we promise to deliver quality and high-value content to your inbox. No ads, no spam. Just the top 3 things you need to know to stay informed about the world and community around you. Subscribe today. Visit KSLNewsRadio.com. or text the word inbox to 57500. That's inbox to 57500. Utah in-depth coverage on KSL News Radio.
Hey, welcome back to the final segment of this special focus KSL News Radio is paying to race relations in Utah. Each segment of this hour, plus many hours in the past, have been dedicated to conversations with members of the African-American community and those with close proximity to it. If you've missed a moment of anything covered today, you can find it at kslnewsradio.com or download it wherever you get your podcasts. There is some incredibly valuable stuff. I'll admit to you that my eyes have been open to some understandings that I didn't quite have before these conversations began. I am grateful to this station for dedicating this time to these conversations. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Melanie Davis. She joins me now. She is the daughter-in-law of retired Pastor France Davis. She's also a mother, a wife, and a business owner, and a Black woman here in Utah. Her professional dedication is to child and family therapy and is the founder of Empath Healing and Wellness. Melanie, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Absolutely. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. I'm pleased to have you here. Let's get right into it. As a counselor, much of your practice is geared towards the Black community here in Utah. Tell me, what are some of the common issues facing your clients when they come to you, and how do you remedy those issues?
Absolutely. So, we opened Empath Healing and Wellness about 3 years ago because we just saw a great need in the community to reach out to the African American population in Utah and offer really specialized mental health care for some of the stress that people experience in the community, being a person of color and especially being a Black person in Utah. But some of the other dynamics around managing racism, mental health, managing any depression and anxiety and things like that, and how there can be unique needs in the diverse community here in Utah.
When your clients approach you and they begin to express these anxieties, what exactly are they saying to you?
Well, I think I would say broadly, there is no one specific experience, right, that a Black person may have in Utah. Every person is unique and every experience is unique. So I want to be really mindful not to speak on behalf of an entire community, but to say that, across the board, there are varying issues that people encounter, anywhere from everyday things everybody encounters, life stress, anxiety, depression, work-life balance, things like that, to things that are very specific to being a Black person in Utah, different prejudices, some systemic barriers that are getting a lot of light and attention right now that we're all learning more about, and that people outside of are also starting to learn about, thanks to shows like this. But we see those things play out in people's workplaces. We see them play out as they're, living their everyday life, as we've seen a lot more in the media these days. So those things all come into a mental health space as someone is working on being healthier and processing emotion and going out and being really productive members of society, like most of us are.
Sure. As you interact with these clients who bring to you various anxieties, as you mentioned, stemming from prejudices or even some systemic issues, what type of advice do you give them for coping or healing from those wounds?
Absolutely. Everyone is unique, but there is a lot of processing that goes on in kind of breaking down traumatic experiences that have happened in the Black community that vary from person to person. Whether it's a client who's experienced profiling, to clients who may be experiencing disparities in education settings here where, children are viewed differently, treated differently, educated differently than their white counterparts, and trying to offer support and ways to navigate that can be positive and educational for the entire environment that a child may be trying to thrive in. I do a lot of work around that, trying to create healthy learning spaces for children and healthy workspaces for Black members of our community as they go into their less diverse workspaces and try to make them healthy and positive and affirming of diversity.
Is Utah right now a healthy place for a Black child to grow up?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. I grew up here in Utah. Are there things that are wonderful about raising a child here in Utah? Absolutely. Is there room to grow with diversity and education around anti-racism, which is something that there's a lot of dialogue around right now? The big R word is a scary word for a lot of people to hear. But the big thing that we're pushing, especially in the Black community and in education and in workplaces, is learning how to have anti-racist practices. So when it comes to raising 3 beautiful Black children here in Utah, when it comes to raising Black children in Utah, there's really intentional things that you need to do and create to make it a place for children to be raised and feel good about themselves and have self-esteem and healthy sense of identity. And there are lots of people who are, I feel like, becoming aware now more so than ever of how critical that is to create that environment for Black children here in Utah.
Let's talk about children for a moment. And on a personal note, you are a mother. As your children grow and play and make friends and find their place in the Utah community at large, are there fears that you have? And how do you arm your children to combat these fears?
Oh, sure. And, I think there's been a lot of dialogue around, how Black children are being taught and educated, and the things that parents are mindful of when you have a Black family, of just educating children around differences, around ways that they may be viewed. And I really love also redirect question, this type of, what are you doing? What do you fear, and how do you your Black children about being safe? Because that's a dialogue that definitely happens. Just to create awareness and knowledge around things that have been. But I think the biggest thing that I love to talk about is, when it comes to this, is how we want it to be. And that education does not just apply to Black children. It applies to all of our children, right? Educating white children, Black children, all children, and the adults that encounter and interact with them around implicit biases, and being aware of seeing people for their intentions and what's accurately happening in a situation, versus some of our biases and interpretations that we may have developed falsely, narratives around Black people may be false. Because that is some of the biggest things that create fear for Black parents, is some of the misinterpretations of the intentions of children and the intentions of Black members of our community.
Melanie Davis, thank you so much. You've been wonderful. You've been enlightening. You've been informative. You've helped me gain a better understanding of race relations in Utah. I wish we had more time to continue our conversation here. It's been wonderful. Maybe we'll find a chance in the future to continue. But again, thank you, Melanie Davis, founder of Empath Healing and Wellness, also a mother, a wife, a business owner, and a Black woman here in Utah. Melanie, again, thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.
All right, likewise. We're going to take a quick break right here, get some news, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at some coronavirus topics, specifically a vaccine. There is likely a vaccine on the way. The question I have for you is, who should get it first? We'll go over that question and maybe some answers next on Live Mic. I'm Lonsberry, and this is KSL News Radio.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City.
2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. Good afternoon. I'm Maria Chaleos. KSL's top story this hour. It is developing news. 2 people have been pulled from the fiery wreckage of a small airplane after it crashed west of Centerville. Highway Patrol Sergeant Nick Street says it happened near the Legacy Parkway and Glover Lane. The people who were on the plane were taken to the hospital in unknown condition. Centerville police say some of the rescuers also suffered minor burns.